I'm not a Ridley Scott hater. I very much appreciate the man's unbelievable energy at the age of 87, and he is one of the few filmmakers who is able to get my arse into theatres to battle crusty popcorn breath and teenagers on their phones. A while back, we had a discussion on the channel regarding Ridley and what exactly is up with him, with some really bonkers decisions he's been making the past few years. This video is something of an extension of that video. I thought there were some really good discussions going on in the comment section, and there's a few things I wanted to talk about. One of the most fascinating things about Ridley is his ability to acquire massive budgets from studios. One reason why it's fascinating is his age. I mean, all due respect, but isn't it a very real possibility that you walk into his trailer on set of a $200 million picture to find he's croaked? Another reason is that the guy seems to be producing so many stinkers, not just in terms of the quality of the films, but mainly the fact that a lot of his films are not making bank. It's like Napoleon being a huge flop. How is he able to follow that up with the mega budget Gladiator II, when that could have killed the career of another director? So this is what I wanted to talk about, and I think it has a lot to do with Scott being happy to compromise on his films. Excuse the rather sensationalist video title, but that's the very worst of how you could describe what Scott does. He sells out. Looking at him more favourably, you could make the argument that he's one of Hollywood's most high-profile pragmatists, and because of this, studios are happy to work with him even if his films aren't always profitable. And I don't mean he's gone woke or anything like that, as some might infer from the title. I'm not getting into all of that stuff, but given he's a guy who gave us Ellen Ripley and Thelma and Louise, I mean, he was pretty much clearly making feminist movies before it was cool. What I mean is that he compromises on his vision in a way that you don't associate with auteur filmmakers. And I think this is a key thing that separates him from the likes of, say, Coppola or Scorsese, for example, who we mentioned in the previous video, and who are definitely directors who fight tooth and nail to get their vision onto the screen. Let me give you a few examples. I recently learned that Palestinian-Egyptian actress May Calamaway supposedly had a significant and integral role in Gladiator II, but apparently, due to her being outspoken on social media regarding the genocide of her people, she was axed from the film. There's room for plausible deniability here, of course. Maybe she was removed for other reasons. But looking at what happened with Melissa Barrera on Scream and others, it does look like if you speak out, you're shown the door. And given how choppy and nonsensical the plot of Gladiator 2 is, it makes sense that a key character basically evaporated. She literally disappeared. One of the few visual evidences she was even in the film are behind-the-scenes selfies taken by Pedro Pascal. This is where a director might step in and argue for his actress, if for the cohesiveness of the film's story, if nothing else. But that's precisely what I'm talking about. In spite of Scott being very profane and outspoken in interviews, there is definitely a company yes-man quality about him. The studio wanted her out, so she's out, without so much as a whimper from Scott. Scott was criticised on Exodus for casting white actors as ancient Egyptians, and his response was, "I can't mount a film of this budget where I have to rely on tax rebates in Spain and say that my lead actor is Mohammed so-and-so from such and such. I'm just not going to get it financed, so the question doesn't even come up." I completely understand where he's coming from here. He's saying he can't make a $200 million historical epic and cast authentic unknowns and has to bring in bankable actors. But that's the point I'm making. Rightly or wrongly, other directors would not have compromised in this situation. Instead, maybe saying, right, let me cast an unknown and I'll lower the film's budget or something. We can remove the scene with the catapult. We can remove this scene maybe. I'll even give back my salary. And that does happen. Martin Scorsese did that with Gangs of New York. He actually gave back his salary for the film to complete it, as close to how he wanted the film to be. And Scorsese has many great examples of fighting for his vision. Look at his Sinatra biopic. That's a movie he's been wanting to make for decades. He's raring to go, but the Sinatra estate won't allow him to tell the story the way he wants to, as he wants to tell a warts and all story. And what's Scorsese done? Has he said, okay, fine, I'll tell a watered down version? No, he straight up has refused to make the movie and has moved on. Is that the right decision? Is it better to make a lesser version of a passion project than no version at all? I'll leave that for you to decide. But the point I'm making is that Scott is the kind of guy who would make a lesser version if it means making it at all. And that puts him in the studio's good books. I'd argue he's one of Hollywood's great pragmatists. He's willing to compromise. Add that to the fact that his movies usually are delivered in time, under budget, and he has a knack for overseeing huge productions with hundreds of extras. It becomes a lot easier to see why Scott is a man the studios trust. Again, some might say sellout. That's a little harsh, it's part of his entire process. I think his director's cuts are very telling as well. It's crazy how many director's cuts and extended versions his movies have. Gladiator has one, American Gangster, The Martian, Robin Hood, Black Hawk Down, 1492, Legend. I mean, come on, Blade Runner has like 7 different versions of the film, and Kingdom of Heaven's director's cut massively changes the movie. It's a huge improvement. Surely Ridley has the clout to fight for his vision to make it to the cinemas, but it appears he doesn't. A filmography like this screams a compromise attitude, a deal with the studio where they cut down the movies to a serviceable length, and the payoff for Scott is that he gets a director's cut on DVD and Blu-ray, and he's happy to settle. Again, it makes sense, but purely from an idealistic point of view, I find it frustrating that he seemingly works so hard on scenes, on characters, on subplots, and then allows them to be bastardized and cannibalized at the expense of the overall film. I mean, that version that comes out in the theatres is the one most people will see. It's got your name on it. And as an artist, wouldn't it infuriate you that that version isn't the one you want out there? Shouldn't it be killing you that your vision has been reduced to a DVD extra? Wouldn't you fight as hard as you can to get the director's cut in theatres? Again, I can see why he does what he does, but you could argue he is sacrificing his artistic integrity. Speaking of director's cuts and your name against your film, I find it interesting that when they released extended editions of the 4 original Alien movies about 20 years ago, Scott allowed the studio to call the Alien one the director's cut, even though he has said the theatrical version of the film is his director's cut. Guys like David Fincher refused permission and didn't want anything to do with it, so they had to call the Alien 3 movie the assembly cut. And yet Scott was happy to prostitute his name to give something to the studios. If it was my name against something that said director's cut, I'd be damn sure it was actually my cut. But that doesn't seem to mean anything to Scott. In terms of Scott being someone who routinely makes flops, and the question as to how he still keeps getting big budgets, I think this claim needs to be analysed in more detail. It is true that it's practically been 10 years since his last bona fide financial hit, The Martian, and since then, and before then, he has made bombs and flops with mixed reception to boot. Napoleon had a budget of $130 million, The Last Duel $100 million, Exodus $140, Prometheus $100 mil, Robin Hood $200 million. These are some hefty budgets. And Gladiator II had a budget of $150 million or so, which ballooned to something like $300 million if reports are accurate. And he's got more stuff lined up after this? How? Well, aside from the reasons already mentioned, he's Ridley Scott. It's really that simple. A lot of big names in Hollywood can coast off achievements from decades ago. He has name recognition, he's reliable, and studios are looking for a hit and are banking on him dropping one of his usual gems every so often that makes bank. And it does happen. Couple that with his superb technical ability and ability to oversee mammoth projects where we don't get stories about spiraling budgets or 20 horses dying on set, and throw in his pragmatism, given he doesn't rock the boat, you can see why he's a Hollywood darling, even if some of his films are flops. Also, let's look at the finances a bit closer. After the highly successful Martian, he made his sequel to Prometheus, Alien Covenant, where there were clear changes to the script to make it more appealing to Alien fans and, for better or worse, minimize the Prometheus events. It grossed $240 million against a $97 million budget, nowhere near close to Prometheus' success. And though Scott planned sequels, it looks like they are dead in the water, and the franchise is going down a different direction. So, when it comes to big franchise movies at least, clearly he can't make any film he wants. All the Money in the World was a major flop, grossing $56 million against a $50 million budget. But I don't think this movie would have soured the studios against Scott. For one, it was not an expensive film to make. You win some, you lose some. But Scott's ability to do quick-fire reshoots to replace Kevin Spacey with Christopher Plummer were amazing. The reshoots were done in late November, and the film's premiere was 18th of December. It was an incredible feat, one that would have shown studios that this is a guy who can get things done, and the Oscar nomination for Plummer was the icing on the cake. House of Gucci grossed about $150 million against a $75 million budget. Not exactly a success, but it's unfair to say that it's a flop. It also was the most successful adult drama from the year it was released, and let's not forget this was during the pandemic recovery period. It probably would have done a lot better if it was released a year later. The studio wouldn't have blamed him for the film's lack of success. The Last Duel was a big bomb, but it had the same issue in that it was released post-pandemic. Not to mention that it was a period movie, and the central story revolved around a topic that can get this video banned just by me saying the word. So not necessarily a film you'd expect to make buck. It was still a critical success, and that would have given him goodwill with the studios. We also have to remember he would have had Napoleon already lined up before the release of The Last Duel, before the studio can get cold feet. And Napoleon didn't make its budget back, but that movie is a very specific case with Apple funding the film to boost their online catalogue. It was always unlikely to make its money back, and that was likely never really the main intention. And Gladiator 2's budget at 160 mil-ish is very reasonable, especially since it has some heavy names. The original is one of the highest grossing films of Scott's career, and he of course was back in the saddle. Of course, this is a rare case where the budget of a Scott film has ballooned to $300 million or something crazy, but a lot of that has apparently been attributed to the strikes. And like it or hate it, Gladiator 2 at the time of the making of this video has grossed $360 million and counting. The studio might consider the offsets understandable with the strikes, and I do hope they don't take the wrong lessons from this movie's supposed success, giving us endless legacy sequels. I'd rather they look at the film and think, hey, there is clearly interest in swords and sandals epics. And this run from The Martian to Gladiator 2 seems to be representative of a pattern in Scott's career. He has a string of flops and movies with middling success, and then the odd bona fide hit comes along every 10 years or so, precisely when he needs it. He'll deliver 3 flops in a row, but the studio will be banking on that inevitable 4th film hit. Before The Martian, Exodus and The Counselor did poorly, but the latter did do well overseas, and Prometheus before this duo was a huge success. Robin Hood and Body of Lies did poorly, Robin Hood doing so bad it could have stopped another director from ever being allowed to make a historical epic ever again. But again, before this, he had major success with American Gangster, and before American Gangster, he had 4 poor box office showings in a row: Black Hawk Down, Matchstick Men, Kingdom of Heaven, and A Good Year. But before this, he had 2 huge hits in Gladiator and Hannibal. So you can see the pattern, and couple this with his pragmatic relationship with studios, I think you can see why he gets the budgets he does. And let's not forget, he's got his own production company scot-free, so I'm guessing some of the costs are put up by his own company. So there you have it. What do you make of Scott's nature to compromise with the studios? And do you think this factors into why he gets such huge budgets for his films? Let me know in the comments section below. Subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching.